Sergeant Frank Spike sat behind his desk, looking out of the window. Outside, cars moved slowly in the cold, gray rain. The sky was heavy with dark clouds, and the wet streets reflected the dim light of the street lamps. Frank sighed and looked down at his arms. His gray hairs reminded him that time had passed quickly. His round stomach pressed against the desk, a sign of too many years sitting behind it. This was his last month as a police officer. After 40 years of service, he would finally retire. He should have felt happy, but instead, he felt tired, disappointed, and even a little angry. The money he would receive after retirement was not enough to enjoy life. He had dreamed of traveling, maybe going on a luxury cruise around the world. But that was impossible. The money wouldn't even pay for a short holiday on England's cold and rainy east coast, where he had lived all his life. As he thought about his future, Inspector Spencer approached his desk. Spencer was young, only 40, and had been promoted 3 years ago. He was always smiling, always confident. His white teeth shone like they belonged in a toothpaste advertisement. Frank had never been as lucky as Spencer. He had worked hard for 40 years, yet he was still just a sergeant. He knew he wasn't as charming or as good-looking as Spencer. But he also knew something else. He was a better policeman. Frank had what other officers called a nose for crime. He could think like a criminal. He understood how criminals planned their actions, and because of that, he could solve the most difficult cases. Spencer, on the other hand, did not have this ability. That was why the young inspector often came to Frank for help. In fact, it was the only time Spencer spoke to him. Spencer stopped in front of Frank's desk and gave him a friendly smile. "Hey, Frank, can I ask you something?" Frank wasn't surprised. It was always the same. "Do you know who the Babingtons are?" Spencer continued. Everyone knew the Babingtons. Ronald Babington was the owner of Babington Oil. He was incredibly rich. His wife, Tabitha, was a famous model. They loved to show off their money. Their beautiful mansion, expensive cars, and luxurious parties often appeared in celebrity magazines. Last month, Ronald had bought a huge diamond for Tabitha. The diamond was displayed in a glass case at the end of a long red carpet inside their mansion. The case had a high-tech alarm system to protect it. Spencer lowered his voice. "Someone told us there's a plan to steal the Babington diamond." Frank raised an eyebrow, pretending to be surprised. Peggy, the owner of the Dog and Duck pub, overheard 2 local criminals making the plan, Spencer explained. "She asked us to keep her name secret, of course." Frank nodded. He already knew what was coming next. "So?" Spencer asked. "What should we do?" "They haven't committed a crime yet." Frank leaned back in his chair and looked out of the window again. He thought about his future. Retirement would be lonely. His pension wouldn't even be enough to buy a cat. The sound of a car outside brought him back to the conversation. He touched his fingers together under his chin, pretending to think. In reality, he was thinking, but not about what Spencer expected. "Listen, do this the smart way," Frank said. "Let them steal the diamond. If we catch them with the diamond, we can arrest them easily." Spencer frowned. "But Frank, we would need the Babingtons to agree. And there are laws against tricking criminals, you know." "That's why we don't tell anyone," Frank said. "We let them steal the diamond. Then, as they escape, we stop their car for speeding. We search the car and find the diamond. Nobody needs to know we knew about their plan." Spencer hesitated. "I don't know, it feels risky." "It will work," Frank insisted. "But the officer who arrests them needs to be reliable." Spencer understood immediately. "Are you sure you want to do it, Frank? It could be dangerous." Frank smiled slightly. "I'll take 2 young officers with me. It'll be fine." "But why?" Spencer asked. "You're about to retire. Don't you want to take it easy?" "That's exactly why I want to do it," Frank replied. "My last case will be my best." A few days later, Frank went to the Dog and Duck pub after work. Peggy, the owner, was wiping glasses behind the bar. "Did you get it?" Frank asked as she handed him his drink. "Yes," she said with a smile. "I have a perfect copy of the Babington diamond." "How did you get it?" "I went to a glassmaker and told him I was a huge fan of the Babingtons," she said. "I told him my boyfriend refused to buy me a diamond, so I wanted a copy just to feel special." "You need a new boyfriend," Frank said. "If I were your boyfriend, I'd buy you a diamond ring and take you on a long, luxury cruise." Peggy laughed. "Oh, really?" Frank just smiled and took a sip of his drink. Frank sat in the back seat of a police car, hidden in a small side street near the Babington mansion. 2 young officers sat in the front. They were strong and ready for action. At 11:30 p.m., a message came over the police radio. The thieves, a man and a tall woman, had met outside the Dog and Duck pub. At 11:37 p.m., they got into a car and drove away. At midnight, the thieves passed Frank's hidden car on their way to the Babington house. At 12:13 a.m., the woman climbed over the mansion's garden wall. A second police team was watching. The man stayed inside the car, waiting. At 12:20 a.m., the woman climbed back over the wall. She was smiling. She ran to the car, and they drove away. As the thieves passed Frank's car, the police lights flashed. The young officer driving the police car followed them. Inside the thieves' car, the man was nervous. "What are they doing here? You said you turned off the alarms." "Relax," the woman replied. "The police don't know anything. Just act normal." The man stopped the car and opened the window. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked, trying to sound calm. You were speeding. We need to give you a ticket. Please step out of the car. Frank searched the car. His hand touched something cold under the seat, the Babington diamond. He carefully put it into his jacket pocket. At the same time, he took something from his trouser pocket and held it up. "All right," he said. "You are under arrest for stealing this diamond." The young officers handcuffed the criminals. "Wow," one officer said. "I've never seen a real diamond up close." "Imagine getting one as a gift," the other added. Frank smiled. Imagine that. 5 weeks later, Frank sat in his new armchair, drinking expensive champagne. His new cat lay at his feet. He picked up the newspaper. The thieves had been sentenced to 6 years in prison. A photo showed the Babington standing next to the diamond, now in a stronger glass case. Frank smiled. Only an expert would notice that the diamond was not the original. He put down the newspaper and picked up a travel magazine. "Peggy," he called. "Bahamas or the Maldives?" Peggy, wearing a small diamond ring, smiled. "Why not both?" Frank laughed. "I did promise you a long cruise." "And I'm so glad I called you first," she said. Frank raised his glass. Life after retirement was going to be wonderful.